Amanda never imagined that one decision would change her life forever. A choice forced on her, a fate she never asked for, and a truth she never saw coming. What happened to her left the entire village speechless. Stay till the end, because her story will shock you. And before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful folktale. In the quiet African village of Umuaka, where palm trees swayed gently and evenings smelled of burning firewood, lived a young girl named Chimamanda, a gentle-hearted 19-year-old known for her soft voice and humble spirit. Since the death of her father, the warmth in her home had faded like a dying flame. Her stepmother, Mama Oluchi, who once pretended to love her, now treated her like an unwanted burden. Where affection should have been, there was resentment. Where guidance should have lived, there was cruelty. Chimamanda endured it all in silence, because her late father always told her, peace is stronger than anger. Mama Oluchi's cruelty didn't stop at harsh words or extra chores. She believed Chimamanda was the cause of every misfortune. If the rain delayed, Chimamanda's fault. If the firewood finished, Chimamanda again. The neighbors whispered about Mama Oluchi's bitterness, but no one dared interfere. In Umuaka, a home was considered sacred, and outsiders seldom stepped into family matters. What made Chimamanda's suffering more painful was her little stepsister, Adaobi, who mirrored her mother's wickedness, mocking and insulting Chimamanda at every chance she got. One Harmattan morning, news spread through the village that a blind traveler named Odogwu, newly arrived, was searching for a wife. The villagers said he was old, poor, and helpless, needing a woman who would serve him. Everyone pitied whoever would be unfortunate enough to be forced into such a marriage. But Mama Oluchi's eyes glittered with a strange satisfaction. She had long waited for an opportunity to remove Chimamanda from the house, permanently. By the next sunrise, Mama Oluchi had already made her decision. She would give Chimamanda to the blind man. Let her go and suffer, she murmured, her lips curling into a wicked smile. Let her see what life without comfort truly is. She imagined Chimamanda begging on dusty roads, guiding a blind man from house to house, living in poverty and shame. What she did not know, what no one knew, was that the man she thought was blind and poor was neither blind nor poor. And fate was about to reshape everything. Chimamanda cried the day she learned her stepmother had promised her to the blind man. Her heart trembled like a leaf in a storm. She had hoped for school, for a future, for even the smallest taste of love. But all of that came crashing down. She knelt before Mama Oluchi, begging, pleading, tears falling like rain on dusty ground. But her stepmother's heart was harder than iron. You should thank me, Mama Oluchi snapped. A blind man is still better than having you in this house. The villagers gathered quietly as Chimamanda was escorted to meet the blind man. They whispered in pity, shaking their heads. Odogwu sat under a large mango tree, his eyes covered with dark shades, his cane in hand, his expression unreadable. His beard was neatly carved, his wrapper expensive-looking, far too expensive for a poor blind wanderer. But grief and fear clouded Chimamanda's eyes, she noticed nothing. She knelt before him respectfully, the way she had been taught to greet elder men. Odogwu spoke softly. His voice was calm, deep, and strangely comforting. "My daughter, do not fear," he said. "Life is not always what we think it is." His words were mysterious, but Chimamanda was too broken to think deeply. With her stepmother refusing to allow her even a night of rest, the marriage was conducted immediately, without celebration, without joy, and without blessings. All Chimamanda carried into her new life was a wrapper, a torn bag, and a heart full of sadness. As they walked away from the village, Odogwu tapped the ground lightly with his cane. But when Chimamanda looked away, he smiled, a knowing, secretive smile. His sight was perfect. His blindness was an act. And the reason was something far deeper than anyone imagined. Chimamanda expected they would walk into a forest, a mud hut, or a poor settlement. That was what everyone imagined a blind man would own. But instead, Odogwu led her to a horse-drawn carriage waiting at the roadside. She gasped. The wheels shone like polished bronze, the horses were well-fed and groomed. Is this yours?" she whispered. Odogwu nodded gently. Her confusion only deepened. Why would a poor blind man have such luxury? The journey was long, but Chimamanda's fear slowly melted into curiosity. Odogwu spoke kindly, asking about her dreams, her past, her life with her stepmother. Chimamanda opened up for the first time in years, and each word she spoke touched Odogwu deeply. She had endured hardship yet remained gentle. She had been insulted yet remained respectful. She had been unloved, yet still carried love in her heart. When they finally arrived at Odogwu's home, Chimamanda froze. Before her stood a massive estate, tall pillars, shining windows, a compound so large it looked like a palace. Servants bowed the moment they approached. "My lord, welcome back," they greeted. Chimamanda turned to him, trembling. My lord," she repeated, confused and frightened. Odogwu placed a hand on her shoulder gently. "My child, your new life begins here," he said. She stared at the mansion, her breath shaking. Everything she believed, everything she feared, had just turned upside down. The next morning, Odogwu stood before her without his dark shades. Chimamanda gasped and almost dropped the calabash she was holding. His eyes were clear, fully seeing. You can see," she whispered, her voice quivering. Odogwu nodded slowly. "Yes, Chimamanda. I have never been blind." Her heart pounded in confusion, fear, disbelief. Was she deceived into a worse situation? Seeing her shaken, Odogwu sat her down. His voice softened. "I disguised myself as a blind man for a reason." He explained how he was a billionaire businessman whose wealth attracted greedy suitors. Many women pretended to love him, only to chase his money. So he hid his riches and tested hearts instead. "I wanted a wife with a pure spirit," he said. "Someone who could love without material gain." He told her how he heard whispers of the kind girl suffering under her stepmother. How he had watched Chimamanda from afar during one of his secret visits to her village. How he admired her humility, her compassion, her selflessness. "You have the heart I prayed for," he said. "You are the blessing I asked God to send." Chimamanda's eyes filled with tears, not from fear, but from overwhelming emotion. For the first time in her life, someone saw her worth. Someone valued her. Someone chose her not because she was convenient, but because she was extraordinary. And in that moment, she realized that destiny, though twisted, had led her to the one place she was meant to be. Days passed, and Chimamanda slowly adjusted to her new home. She was treated with respect, served delicious meals, given fine clothing, and taught new skills. But Odogwu never rushed her. He gave her space, encouraged her education, and treated her like a queen. Chimamanda had never experienced gentleness before, and it softened her fears like morning sun melting mist. Odogwu, too, began to change. His once lonely mansion now echoed with laughter and warmth. He found joy in teaching Chimamanda how to read account books, how to run a household, how to manage businesses. She was a fast learner. Every night, they sat under the moonlight talking about life, dreams, and destiny. Slowly, something beautiful began to grow between them: love, respect, companionship. What touched Chimamanda most was that Odogwu saw her not as a girl from a poor home, but as a partner. He valued her opinions. He listened to her fears. He motivated her dreams. And as the days turned into weeks, Chimamanda's heart began to heal. The scars left by her stepmother slowly faded, replaced by confidence and peace. One evening, Odogwu looked at her with deep admiration. "Chimamanda," he said softly, "you were brought to me by fate, but I choose you with my heart." She felt tears gather in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt truly chosen, not forced, not pushed, not used, but loved. Months later, Odogwu decided it was time for Chimamanda to visit her village again. Not as a broken girl, but as a woman transformed by destiny. When their convoy arrived, villagers rushed out in awe. The cars were grand, the guards impressive, and Chimamanda looked radiant like a princess. No one recognized her at first, not even Mama Oluchi. When her stepmother finally realized who she was, her mouth hung open in disbelief. Adaobi froze. Chimamanda stepped out gracefully, her head held high. Mama Oluchi stuttered, "Kai? Chimamanda? Is this really you?" Chimamanda smiled gently, her heart free of bitterness. "Yes, Mama. I have come to greet you." Odogwu stepped forward next, towering elegantly. The villagers gasped as he introduced himself as her husband, the billionaire who owned several companies and estates. Mama Oluchi fell to her knees trembling. "Forgive me," she cried. "I didn't know. I didn't know." Chimamanda knelt beside her and lifted her up gently. "Mama, I forgave you long ago," she said softly. Her kindness shocked everyone. In that single moment, Chimamanda taught the village an unforgettable lesson, that love was stronger than hate, and compassion was more powerful than cruelty. Chimamanda sponsored her stepsister's education, rebuilt her mother's shop, and helped young girls in the village who suffered under oppressive homes. She vowed no girl should ever feel as helpless as she once did. Her story spread far and wide, inspiring countless hearts. Her marriage to Odogwu blossomed like a flower in rainy season. They worked together, prayed together, built businesses together, and traveled across nations. Chimamanda became a symbol of grace, a girl who rose from rejection to royalty, from tears to triumph. One special night, Odogwu took her hand and whispered, "You were never meant to suffer. God allowed the storm only to guide you to your destiny." Chimamanda smiled, leaning against him, feeling the warmth of the life she once thought impossible. And so, the girl who was pushed to marry a blind man ended up marrying a billionaire with perfect sight and an even more perfect heart. Her story became a folktale told around fires, teaching generations that destiny cannot be destroyed by wickedness, and that sometimes, what looks like suffering is the beginning of unimaginable blessings. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment and share to your family and friends. See you soon.